Hola, I'm Claudia Romo Edelman.
And I'm Cynthia Kleinbaum-Milner.
And this is a podcast a la Latina.
The playbook to succeed being your authentic self.
Today, Elisa Botero, partner at Portuguese, an international law firm. And here are the 3 key takeaways.
Number 1, how going through a difficult personal situation propelled her forward. It allowed her to overcome imposter syndrome, put things in perspective, and become more of a risk taker.
Number 2, how she has carved out space for herself by focusing on innovation and new industries.
And number 3, how she became a partner in a legal firm and understand the sacrifices that came with it.
All of that and more here at A La Latina.
Stick around.
Cynthia, you're the Chief Marketing Officer of Money Lion, but let me ask you, what is Money Lion?
Money Lion is a finance app that was created to help everyone make better financial decisions because the financial services industry has historically been very focused on people that already have money. And Money Lion for the last 10 years has been building products for the average American, products that will actually help you reach your financial dreams. I'll give you the example of our Raw Money account, which is a banking product that has all the features of premium banking checking accounts, like no minimum balances, no hidden fees, no ATM fees at over 55,000 locations. The list goes on and on. But we also built some very unique features for people like our Latino community. We have something called roundups. If you have spare change, instead of just spending it on whatever, you can invest it automatically and start building wealth. And for those moments when your paycheck hasn't arrived and you need a little bit of cash, we have a product called InstaCash, and you can get up to $1,000 in a cash advance. We also have educational content that is really fun to watch, but actually helps you make financial decisions, and a community of what we call money lions, like our Latinos, who help each other out in their journey to their American dream.
In this podcast, the great Elisa Botero. It's such a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Claudia, Cynthia. It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation.
You have an incredible story. You're the first lawyer that we have in the podcast. We want to know everything about you. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about your background?
Yeah,
the values that you were brought up with?
Yeah, so I was brought up in Colombia. I'm originally from Medellin, which is venga, la zona del café. I grew up in Bogota, though. I went to law school in Colombia. When I was 24, I had just graduated law school. My dad was appointed at a position in D.C., in Washington. So I found myself moving to the U.S. right after graduating law school in Colombia. I worked for 2 years at the Inter-American Development Bank, which is a development bank in D.C. So I was there for 2 years. Then I did my master's at Columbia University in New York, took the bar exam, which is the exam to qualify to practice in New York. And I joined Curtis right after I graduated from my master's. So that was in 2010. And I've been at Curtis for 14 years.
That was like the shortest summary of your entire life. So you grew up in Colombia.
I did.
Medellin.
No, I actually grew up in Bogota, but I feel very paisa at heart, which is how you call the people from the Medellin region. Sort of
and
thing.
why law? Why did you? Is that like a common career for a woman in Colombia?
I actually remember going to law school and all the good students were all women. All women. Why law? I mean, although parents never want to determine what their kids do, both my parents are attorneys, and it's just kind of, it's what you see at home, and I don't know, it just felt right for me. I've also always been very, very bossy, I guess, since I was a child. Very determined, very argumentative, very kind of rational, structured. So I thought those were kind of skills that lend itself to becoming a lawyer. Also in Latin America, we don't have like the flexibility here where you have like so many majors. You have to choose, when you're 18, you have like 7 or 8 careers, and you're an architect, a lawyer, a doctor, engineer, So, it just seemed like right for me.
So then you move here, and unlike many people that I know that moved to the US as lawyers and then didn't practice, because it sounds like you don't have to study again law, but you have to pass the bar. Like the laws are different in different countries.
Absolutely.
So how was your transition from being a lawyer in Colombia to then becoming a lawyer in the US?
Well, funnily enough, there wasn't much of a transition because I never got to practice in Colombia. I came to the US right out of law school, rather. So that was actually a challenge because in trying to find work here when I graduated from my LLM, I had no background that I could kind of leverage in that process. So it actually forced me to think about, okay, how can I stand out? What do I bring to the table that differentiates me from attorneys that graduated in the US? So at the time, what I thought is I speak 3 languages because I also speak Portuguese, obviously Spanish. So I was like, okay, I've always been very flexible in my interests. I just like doing things well, but I'm interested generally in many areas of the law. So I was like, okay, where are languages relevant? And I found this area of the law, which is called arbitration, which is essentially international disputes, international arbitration. So I really kind of saw myself as having an advantage in that area. And in fact, that's how I was hired at Curtis, because they needed Spanish speakers in that moment for international arbitration. So it was an area where my international skills were valued. So, that's how I entered the firm. And then once you're inside, it's obviously easier to kind of navigate within, and I've expanded from that. But it was initially that international aspect that helped me transition, if that makes sense.
And you've been there for 14 years.
14 years. So I've done my whole career since I was a first-year associate until becoming partner in 2020.
So it took you 10 years to become a partner?
It took me 10 years,
Is
exactly.
That shorter than normal, longer than normal?
That's about right. That's about right, yeah.
And how do you become a partner in a law firm besides billing a lot of hours?
I love this question. It's not a very transparent process, to be frank. And it just it's clouded in mystery. And someone told me once, you're not made partner, you make yourself partner. In 2019, so after 9 years at the firm, I pitched the firm on opening a Bogota office. I really wanted to go back to Colombia. My husband is also Colombian, so I was like, I want to kind of expand what I can do. I also thought it may be harder for me to find clients here in the US, so I want to go to kind of my roots, my network. And I just said, hey, I want to open an office in Bogota. At the time, the law firm had 17 offices around the world. This was meant to be the number 18. Now we have 19. And I just said, I want to open an office in Bogota. I want to go back there and explore the market. And they said yes. I created a business plan. I'm like, this is why Colombia makes sense. They said yes. So I moved back to Colombia in 2019, started doing exploratory work and finding meetings, but I was an associate at the time. And at one point I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. I can't ask for more meetings with senior people being an associate. I need to be made partner now. Otherwise, this project will fail. I mean, I need to be seen as senior to get business. So January 2020, I was like, I need to be partner. You can actually make me partner or just give me the title partner, whatever you want, but I need this in order to actually make this happen. And they said yes. So I was made partner. So to your question, how do you become a partner? In my case, I asked to be one.
Why do we have so little Latina partners in legal firms? Why is it connected to readiness, not asking? Or could it be that very similar to the relationship that we have with power? We don't want to do it because of the sacrifices. Imaginarily or not, it means that we're going to have the 150,000 hours a week that you have to work. Yeah. What it means. So why?
Right. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not an easy profession. It does require a lot of hours, and I definitely put in the time. And
which is what?
Well, the target at firms to get a bonus is 2,000 hours a year. So that means that if you're working at that stage is because you're working very hard. So I would have years that I would have 2,200 hours. So it was definitely intense. I think now, because it's also I have more ownership of what I do, it doesn't feel so bad because I've integrated my work into my life and my life into my work, which I think has been crucial. But at the time when I was a junior attorney, I was like, my work, my life. And that makes it harder. But if you're thinking of building a community within your work, then it doesn't feel that hard to work so hard because you're with your friends and you're like, oh, I enjoy so much being here. Of course, it comes at sacrifice. I don't have children. I've decided not to have children. So in my personal case, it wasn't a decision about like family or career. But kind of going back to your question, why don't we have more Latinas? It's more than a Latina problem. It's actually a female problem.
It's a female problem, but then it's like
on top of that. Exactly, because we have that dual kind of identity. Mm-hmm. So we're a double minority, if you will, but it's not an issue of pipeline because the stats for male, female participation in law school is like almost 50-50 or a little bit more skewed on the female side. But then it's like that growing and going up the ranks that really hurts us. It's that how you retain that talent. And unfortunately, I think a lot of women decide it's too hard and
So it is, from our side, the sacrifices or the choices that we have to make, whether like being a partner really does come with extra hours?
It does come with extra. Well, actually, no. When you become a partner, I think if you manage it well, it could be less. It could be less, and you could have a more balanced life. But it's that hump that you have to go through because at the beginning it is very demanding.
In order to get your way 2,200 hours, when you're a partner, 2,000 hours, which, like around or something like that.
Right.
Okay, so it is that choice, but also the environment that is very male-dominated.
It is very male-dominated, yes.
And it is very one culture, even if it's a global firm.
Yeah.
Where I think that there's that lack of understanding of cultural nuances.
Yeah.
Stereotypes? Tell us more.
Yeah. So in fact, about stereotypes, I actually teach a seminar, Curtis, called Implicit Bias in the Legal Profession, because this was something that was really interesting to me. And I mean, there's a million studies that show that, women and other outgroups is the kind of technical term for it, are judged more harshly, requirements are applied more stringently, our performance is attributed to receiving help or, just being lucky instead of being competent. So I'm very aware that that's the case. But again, I mean, these are the cards that we are dealt, and we have to play to our advantages. So I'm very aware of the stats, very aware of why the stats are how they are. But, I'm just going to trace my own path, honestly, because what do we do then? Like sit around and just... And then what I did at the law firm is first teach others about this. So that's how I kind of started creating cultural change. And then I also realized that why am I sitting back and letting me living in this culture rather than me being like an agent of change in this culture? And what I've found is that if I take the leadership, people are receptive. It's just, you can create the culture you want to work in. So, yes, the culture is male-dominated. Yes, it's hard because of the different cultural nuances, but also you can change it.
You can flip the script.
You can kind of be the agent of change, and you acting differently, people will react differently. Something that is very characteristic of us Latinas is that we're emotional and we're passionate. And I used to kind of hide that, but then I had a very difficult personal situation. My husband went through a very difficult disease, and an American would normally be so guarded about that and never tell anyone what they're experiencing. I just shared it with anybody that would listen. And people were maybe caught off guard a little bit because they're like, oh my God, she's like sharing all these details about like a personal diagnosis and all the situations that revolved around that. And then what I found is that everyone responded to that vulnerability with vulnerability. They wanted to cheer me on. They supported me even more. So I made that choice of like, I could just keep on with the culture and not share what I'm going through, or I can be like super open. And what I saw is that caused a change in everyone. And then everyone was more affectionate towards me and more caring and more. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm, kind of changing the whole dynamic and the whole culture just by being sincere about like a personal challenge. And that's how I, again, started integrating my life with my work, because I thought, like, these are the people I see every day. Why wouldn't they be a part of something that personally is affecting me so deeply? And that they can offer support, not only at work, but also personally. And, they went and donated blood for my husband and all those things. But if I had never shared, how would they know?
Yeah. I feel like the really hard work happens earlier in your career, and then you have more flexibility.
Exactly. Well, hopefully, if you've done things correctly.
So how do you do things correctly?
Well, I spend a lot of time building a team, and that means that I can now focus on other things that are not just like tiki, which of course is important. But as I was mentioning to you guys before the call, ultimately, law firms are a business, and the role of a partner is to bring revenue to the firm. And I can bring, just generalizing here, but there's two ways to bring revenue. I can bring clients, or I can just work hours and bill for that time. And I decided that I want to get business. I want to work for my own clients. I want people working for my clients. Yeah. So in the ideal world, it would be more balanced. You would work for clients and get clients, both, because you need both, right? You do need partners that are experienced to do work. Yeah.
So good salespeople.
Exactly, and good salespeople. But not everyone is also suited for sales. Not everyone wants to work endlessly. Yeah. But within that kind of continuum of billing time, getting new clients, I'm kind of more on this edge. So
it's more like going after clients.
Going after clients.
Right.
So it means that, well, first, I've been able to go after clients because I've built a team. Yeah. So I've built a team that I can delegate actual work to, and then I put so much time in training my team, literally from like, this is how you create a table of contents in Word, to like, this is how you think about this big legal problem. Anyway, so I put so much time that they're like replicas of me. I've like managed the act of like cloning myself because I've put in so much time that I trust 100% what they're doing. So that means that I can put them to work and focus on getting more. And then when I get more, I'll get more people. Yeah. And they'll be able to train those people and we'll create an organization. But some of the partners haven't done that. So they continue to work endlessly and tirelessly. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, well, but maybe they haven't done that because not everybody can be a good manager.
That's
you can maybe teach yourself. But I think there's this fallacy or this like, the way that corporate ladders, and it sounds like in the legal world is the same. It's you're a great individual contributor, so you are rewarded with a team. I mean, that's crazy.
No,
you can be an excellent manager and a bad individual contributor, or the other way around. And then you're a great manager and you're rewarded with becoming a leader, which again, you can be a great leader and a bad manager, or the other way around. So how did you become a good manager? What was your playbook to become a good manager?
Well, first, let me say something about what you're saying, which I agree completely. And in the legal profession, that is enhanced because law firms, especially my firm and other kind of medium-sized firms, are not professionally managed, meaning that they're managed by the same attorneys, which is trippy because it means that it's attorneys, dealing with personnel matters, handling marketing and finances, where there's like complete professions dedicated to those areas. So at a law firm, of course you have an HR department, but it's not like what you have at a technology company or a big bank, that it's people thinking about how you develop people. It's just attorneys thinking about developing people. So those managerial skills are just not necessarily natural to attorneys, and nobody teaches you how to do that. I have to say that leading has always been very natural to me, even as a child.
Leading or managing?
Leading and
mentoring.
And mentoring, yes. Unfortunately for my cousins, but my idea of play was setting up a school in my dollhouse. And I was the eldest, so my grandma would force all my cousins to attend school. So I was like, always, since I was a child, I was like, do homework, da-da-da. So it really came organically to me.
Yeah.
But I do also feel that part of becoming a good manager is setting very clear expectations, so that people can deliver, and providing, good feedback. I don't know if that's necessarily a playbook, but again, that kind of came all naturally to me.
How do we know, from what you're saying, in a firm like yours, how do we know if Latinas are good for becoming lawyers? Because they could be great salespersons, they could be great managers, they could be great followers. What is it to be lawyers, good partners?
I think the legal profession is about building trust with your clients. And I think Latinas are well suited to build trust.
Build trust.
Yeah. We're so, I think, caring and so warm. Having the ability to connect personally to people, I think is such a superpower. And I think that makes us great attorneys, because it helps build trust, build that intimacy with someone that has an issue that you can help them with. So I think that's one key thing. I also think we're very, passionate, persistent, and that is very crucial, because again, you kind of have to pound in order to get somewhere. And I know we haven't touched on this, but I started the AI, artificial intelligence initiative at my firm, and I started it 2 years ago. And the number of no's that I, from senior partners of this is ridiculous, blah, 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 this is so dangerous. And I would just
But why? Why did you know? Because you could have also picked the metaverse, which nobody talks about. So what was about AI that you thought this?
Not only that, building on that. You seem to be on a very male-dominated area, but also seems to be strategic, that you've chosen to go into energy or into AI.
Yeah. So my two industry focus areas are energy broadly, and I guess technology more broadly. And for energy, it was just a matter of, I was an associate and I was put in a lot of energy matters. My firm does a lot of work in hydrocarbons, oil and gas. So, I had no choice in that, but I really found kind of a passion for that industry. It's from a technical perspective, really interesting. And then when I became a partner and I had that industry expertise, I was like, okay, how am I going to get a big energy company to hire me instead of the man, likely, that is 30 years my senior, that has been working with them in oil and gas matters for 60 years. And I was like, they're not going to switch. They're not going to do it. So I was like, okay, so how do I go to what's next within my industry? So at the time, and this was 2021, it wasn't that long ago, but I saw that there was growing interest in the energy sector in hydrogen, which is a new kind of low carbon alternative. And this was literally a strategic play that I didn't know was going to work. It actually eventually did work. But I was like, okay, so I'm going to own within my area something that is new. So my clients, future clients, don't have to take away from their traditional advisor, legal advisor, to give to me, because that's a really hard sell. Someone that is 30 years my senior, male or female, has quite a bit of advantage on, even though I have great experience, et cetera. I mean, it's just being realistic. If you have a 20-year relationship, it's hard to switch. So I'm like, I'm just gonna start afresh. Within what I know, capitalizing on my experience, but something new. So I was like, I'm just gonna focus on hydrogen. I'm gonna only talk hydrogen. I developed a seminar on hydrogen. Long story short, that was the way into one of the largest energy companies in Latin America, who's now my client.
That was a strategic decision.
That was a strategic plan.
Now, the piece that I am curious about is, and then it comes another Latina barrier, which is we don't have as an expertise self-advocacy, promotion, self-promotion. We don't put our name out there. We get things done as opposed to getting credit. And in order to make yourself known, to get clients to know that you're going to do that, you do need to invest in being in the editorial board of magazines or doing that.
Absolutely.
So tell me more. My sister is going exactly through that. And so...
No, I mean, I can't understate how important it is to put all that time that is not billable into building your profile. What flipped the script for me is that I, as an associate, I was like, oh, why is the firm not doing this, not doing that? And then when I became a partner and I saw it from the partner perspective, I was like, oh, they're not deciding not to give me a role. Nobody has thought about it. So I'm just gonna do it. And that's just has been my approach. And I learned a saying the other day from a client, and I'm gonna say in Spanish, but she was saying, yo me baño en todos los aguaceros. And yo me baño en todos los aguaceros. I shower in every rain. Meaning that I'm like, I just see a problem and I'm like, okay, nobody's tackling that. I'm just gonna take it. I'm just gonna take it. So I never, once I kind of saw that problems weren't being solved, not because they were like, we want it this way. Yeah. This is what we want. But nobody was just taking it on.
Yeah.
So I just took that leadership. I just literally was like, I'm this. I tell when I'm doing all this AI stuff and I'm meeting with vendors with AI tools that we're trying to onboard, I say, I'm the self-appointed innovation officer at my firm. Because literally, I was just like, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, and they're like, okay, go and do it. I don't wait for people to open that space for me. I'm creating my own opportunities.
And the last piece on this is, how do you know, like you just said, critically important to do self-promotion?
Yes.
How do you do it on top of having to be a manager and a salesperson and a this? How do you get advice on how to do self-promotion?
Oh my God. I actually had a coach, a professional business development coach. Her name is Betsy. Betsy, I love you. What she taught me about self-promotion is that, and this really helped me because it's so obvious now, but it was so kind of this big realization at the time, was about like LinkedIn, really. And she's like, LinkedIn should be 80% about elevating others, offering value, and only 20% or maybe 10% about self-promotion. Mm-hmm. So everything is self-promotion in the end, because everything I say on that platform will come back to me. But I can do it in a way of not being like, I'm so proud to be ranked as a...
I hate that. Exactly.
That's so... It comes so unnatural. It's just so ridiculous. So I can do that 10% of the time because you do have to do it. And if I don't know, recently I was ranked as one of the 100 top female attorneys by Latinvex, which is
You should have told us that when we were doing the intro.
You're right.
But we'll do it now.
We'll do it again.
You are just ranked.
For the 4th year in a row, I was ranked as one of the top 100 female attorneys in Latin America. So I have to say that, that's a post. Mm-hmm. But then the other 80% of the time, what I'm doing is like, I saw this piece of news about what's happening in the legal field for whatever, hydrogen. So these are my takeaways. So I'm offering value. I'm offering value. People are like, oh, she saved me reading that article because like she already analyzed it. Yeah. She already, got takeaways. But obviously that's coming back to me. And you really need to tell people, like, how will people hire me for their AI-related work if they don't know that I'm doing that.
Yeah.
So you really have to put yourself out there and tell people what you know, what you're interested in, so that people can find you.
Yeah. I feel like we've gone around, but we haven't really gone in the topic of your husband.
Yeah.
And I know you offered to talk about it, so I'm just going to take that offer. If you can share with our audience what you went through.
Yeah.
I would love for you also to connect it to these superpowers.
Yes.
First, your superpowers, how those superpowers as a Latina woman help you overcome, and what happened with work? How did you survive?
Yeah. So my husband was diagnosed with cancer during the pandemic. It was December of 2020. We were living in Colombia at the time. As you recall from earlier in the conversation, I had become a partner in January of 2020. Then the pandemic started. So we were working remotely from Colombia. The treatment started there. Unfortunately, it went horribly wrong. But I had the great, blessing of having the possibility of having insurance here. And I'm also an American citizen, so is my husband. So I literally spent my 2020 bonus on an air ambulance to bring him to New York to be treated here at a hospital specializing in cancer. My husband was fully disabled for a year. He was in a wheelchair for about 4 months. This was all through a pandemic, and I didn't work at all for 6 months. How did I handle that? So I was saying earlier in the conversation, first, I was so open with everyone at the firm. Again, it was just such a crisis that it was impossible to hide it. It was just consuming my whole life. So I was very, very open with everyone. And what I received was just support. I would call one of my senior partners and I would say, I don't know when I'll be back to work. I'm a caregiver all day. I mean, my husband needs my support 24 hours of the day. I can't lose my job because I can't lose my medical insurance. And he's like, the only way you will lose your job and your medical insurance is if we go bankrupt. You will not lose your job or your medical insurance. Worry about the important things. So again, being a human allows others to be humans. So I was so thankful, and it kind of reignited that commitment to my work, that my work was there for me personally. And then everyone surrounded me. My associates would connect with me at odd hours of the day when I had my computer in the hospital. So everyone kind of adapted. My parents, and this is an amazing blessing that we have as Latinos, my parents moved in with me. So only when my parents moved in with me, I was able to go back to work remotely because, literally my mom took care of everything that, is involved in running a household. Mm-hmm. So I started working again. The first few months, it was actually very curious because work became a refuge. It was the only area of my life that hadn't exploded. It was also something that I was good at and could help me escape the very difficult situation we were going through. So I was actually very happy to have that. And still everything was remote, so I had the flexibility to kind of stop, go to a hospital, spend the day there. It's very long hours at the hospital. So, I had my computer. I could do it at the same time. People adjusted to my new schedule. So it was very reactive at the time, just kind of barely surviving. But then as my husband's treatment progressed and I saw him very slowly recover from that initial kind of shock, which was very hard on both of us mentally, and for him, obviously, especially for his body as he started walking again, all those things, I started becoming more proactive. And I have so much clarity as to how that has impacted me on the professional side, because it really has, in a really odd way, propelled me forward. And the two ways that it has done that is, first, I had horrible imposter syndrome. I was like, oh my God, I am so insecure about my experience. I have an accent, that are, all the things that we suffer as Latinas and as women. And my husband's disease, oddly, cured me of my imposter syndrome because I was like, oh my God, I've handled so much that I have like so much power like within me that I can take on anything and everything. So, some would say I went too far on the other end because sometimes I'm like someone, I don't know, doesn't hire me as a client or goes to another firm. I'm like, definitely you're lost. Yeah. Definitely you're lost. And I say that with like fully convinced that that's the case. But then the other thing that it did for me, that experience on the personal side, is that after I've dealt with life and death situations, everything gains just a lot of perspective. So anything from work just doesn't seem as important. But that's not in a way, not a being jaded of like, oh, it doesn't matter, and I'm like just detached from it, but actually like I care about it, but this really is not life and death.
Yeah.
And then I guess the third way, which is connected to this, is that I was kind of more risk averse, and I think that's something attorneys are known for. And I'm what's the opposite of being risk averse?
Risk taker.
Risk taker. Yeah. Because I'm like, what the heck? So I'll be, cold messaging people on LinkedIn and like just doing it. And then if it doesn't work out, like nothing happened. But because none of the risks that I'm taking in my career or my profession are really risks. Yes. I mean, it really is not life and death. So I was just like, wow, it like opened this whole world of like being just more bold.
Is this through this experience that you decided not to have children?
Yeah, it was partly through this experience, oddly enough. This is getting really personal, but I wanted to have children. Well, I thought I wanted to have children. I went through IVF several times. The last one of my IVF rounds was actually in January of 2020. And after that failure, after repeated failures of my treatment, I went to a psychiatrist because I was like, everything is medically okay. What's happening? So I went to a psychiatrist that specialized in kind of fertility issues. So, she knew me from prior sessions that I had with her, and I was like, so this is why I want to have children. This is why I don't want to have children. Like, she's like, okay, just tell me everything. And at the end, she's like, Elisa, I don't think you want children. And I was like, what? It just took me by surprise. She's like, I don't think you want children. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And then the pandemic started, which of course meant that I had to stop my treatment. And then my husband got sick. And then one thing led to another. But like at the other end of this, 4 years later, what I realized that I didn't want children. But it's so hard to accept that because it really is not the common
societal
path. And it was even hard for me to accept it. And in a way, my husband's disease and everything that happened and his treatment gave me kind of more peace of mind with that decision. It also took a lot of pressure out of us as a couple because nobody was wondering. I've been with my husband for 17 years. So, people are like, okay, so when are you having, and people are, they ask that with good intentions and love, but that feels, implicitly as pressure. Yeah. But, well, not necessarily pressure, but it's just like the way things are. And the moment my husband got sick, nobody ever asked that again. So it like kind of took the pressure off. I was focused on something else. And yeah, so now we've decided we're not having children. And I feel very at peace with that decision.
Okay.
And we feel very grateful for your vulnerability, telling your personal story and giving permission to other Latinas to make peace with their decisions and understand that life-threatening situations, life and death situations can actually help you understand your real value and what you're capable of.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you guys for listening. Yeah.
So you've gone through a lot.
Yeah.
Especially in the past 4 years.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've gained a lot of perspective.
Oh my God, yes.
So if there was a time machine, a phone time machine, and you could call Elisa in her early 30s to tell her something else besides what you just told us about, I'm sure you would tell her, don't feel like an imposter, take more risks, and put things in perspective. What else would you tell her?
I would say you are capable. As I think that's what I would say.
You doubted yourself when you were in your 30s?
I think there was a lot of self-doubt, and that meant that I was more guarded, more risk-averse. I think all of that are symptoms of that lack of self-confidence. So that's what I would say. You are capable. And in fact, going to my husband's treatment, I had a doctor that was very helpful to me when I was kind of in my early 20s. She's someone that has a very kind of Eastern philosophy background and a Buddhist background. Well, anyway, I don't want to get into the specifics, but when my husband's situation happened, I really had the striking contrast because I called one of my friends and I was like from the hospital, and the moment that this diagnosis happened which was literally catastrophic. And she's like, I don't know how you're gonna do it. I don't think you can do it, I think is what she said. Yeah. But not saying it in a bad way, but it's like in a way of recognizing how hard it was. And I was like, I don't think I can do it. It's just it's so hard. And then through someone, this doctor that had this kind of philosophy told my sister-in-law to tell Elisa that she has been working all her life to be prepared for this, that she's ready. And that was such an important message to receive on day one. Mm-hmm. She's like, tell her that she has been, all of her life, she's been working towards this moment, that she is prepared, that she has all the skills, all the tools she needs. And I was like, yes. And I'm just gonna do it.
So what about if we take the time machine and we bring it forward, like 20 years from now? So
20 years from now, yeah.
Yeah. How is Elisa then? And
How
what
is
would
Elisa
you tell
then?
her now?
Look, I feel so privileged of where I am right now because I have the life experience of someone that is 70 to 80 years old, but I'm in my early 40s. So I have, all my life ahead of me, but and I'm not going to be modest here, with a lot of wisdom and a lot of life experience on my back. So I really hope that me in 20 years, I've been able to build the place that I want to work with, that I'm experiencing joy, which is such an important thing. I love the place that I work at. I love the people that I work with. And in 20 years from now, I hope I'm one of the leaders of the firm, and I'm bringing it forward into the next 200 years. On the professional side, that I have a team that I value, that values me, that works those 2,000 hours with joy, that bring all of them to their work, that have integrated life and work. And on the personal side, I look forward to a very long life with my husband, who I adore, and my 2 dogs. But I really want to kind of continue on and live the rest of my life with kind of living the lessons that I've worked very hard to learn. So, I want to kind of continue being mindful of those and just applying them to my life and work. Yeah.
So here to the next, and the CEO, the Latina CEO of our global legal firm.
Yes, exactly.
Well, Elisa, thank you so very much for coming with us and talking.
It was great.
Thank you, Cynthia. It was amazing. Thank you.
And with your leadership and expertise, we're going to be able to lead and succeed a la Latina.